Hey friends, welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. It is Vanessa and we are at the end of the year, my favorite time of year. Well, no, I do love Easter, but that's usually because it's around my birthday. And summertime, especially if you're from New Jersey. Memorial Day weekend is always the unofficial start to summer and the best. But anyway, I do also love the end of the year. So I wanted to take the time today to talk a little bit about kind of where we've been for 2025 and kind of where we're going for 2026. As you saw in one of our past episodes, we launched the Kirkpatrick Collective, and there's just a lot that is coming in 2026. 2025, I feel like I say this probably every year since 2023. It's been a really difficult year. 2023, I bought the business, which was wonderful, but we had issues with my dad, and his health and things like that we dealt with. That took a lot out of me. And I could cry right now talking about that, so we're not going to. But 2024 was also very challenging, being that I moved and, just had a lot of change. And I think the industry, we were seeing a lot of disruption in 2023, but it didn't hit me as badly until 2024. And then there were a lot of highs in the year, for sure. Like in 2024, signing off on publishing the book and finally getting that book deal, which was incredible. But it was a challenging year. I think, if I'm honest, there's a lot that we don't talk about professionally about what's going on in our lives, and like everything that people see on LinkedIn is, all of our highlight reels, right? Like we're not sitting here and posting our failures or kind of what's happening on the back end. So, some things happened then. In 2025, there was a lot of hits to the face, but also the light started kind of coming forward again, if you will. And like I started to see like that light at the end of the tunnel. So one thing that I want to do today, it's a little bit of a different episode, but just really be a little bit more reflective on the year and reflective on kind of where we're going as a brand, and we're going, like as a model. So for those of you that may not have seen it, so every year I pick a word of the year, both professionally for the business and personally for myself. And so I'm not going to talk about my personal word of the year, but in case you're wondering, for 2025, it was peace and reclaiming my peace. But for 2025, KP's word was catalyst, which was an interesting word for me to pick, because I knew that 2025 was not going to be the big standout year that I think other years I thought were going to be a little bit more like that. But I had this feeling in like my belly that 2025 was going to be the start of something, and there was going to be a lot of shedding from the old, and new things that came to be. So let's get a little bit about kind of like what this all means. And so for me, having a word of the year isn't just about like having something that the team can get behind, but it's more about, or like not just like something that like we put out in marketing, right? But it's really something more for like the team and more for me as a leader to really be like my North Star for the year. Now, like obviously like our vision and our mission is obviously like our North Star, right? Like what we're working towards. But every year has a different theme behind it, or different reason for being. Some years are your build years, some years are your run years, some years are your just hold on to your hats, or in the words of, was it that movie, Devil Wears Prada, gird your loins. Some years, you're just going to hold on and brace for impact because, things are just, there's a lot of disruption. So our work at KP, has always been about how do we make impact and how do we ensure that we can support those that are looking to make impact and prove that impact. And as I reflect on the brand over the years, the brand has always been a steward, one of those, it's the Kirkpatrick model, right? Like it's the model. It's so interesting when I meet people and they ask me what I do and they ask me about the model. And I'm like, it's truly the standard for learning and development for how you evaluate training effectiveness. And so I wanted to, really ensure, like, as I picked our word for 2025, it was about kind of where we are now and where we're going towards the future. So 2025, our word was catalyst, right? So catalyst causes change without being the center of attention, which you may think I do love being the center of attention, but if you know anything about me, or if you watch the episode where Amy interviewed me, you would know that I hate being the center of attention. And I knew that 2025 was not going to be the hero year. I don't know if that makes sense, but in my mind, I knew it was going to be the start of something. It was going to create momentum. It was going to be the beginning of something, but it wasn't going to be this big standout year that I knew would come later. Something in me, in my gut and in my soul always said, 2026 was going to be more of that standout year. And I'm glad. We started the year with a new administration that completely changed and disrupted our everything, not just at KP, but like our work, our country, internationally, things changed and shifted. So there's so much uncertainty, and then Doge came in and did what it did. And so there was a lot happening on top of people really still not getting back. Like there was less certainty, even though we knew who the new administration was in the private sector. And so, yeah, it just wasn't, I knew it wasn't going to be our year. But I think that knowing that, as someone who is impulsive at times, is always looking for like the next thing and to like make sure I leave a mark and make sure I leave an impact and like do it big and all of these things, for me to take the time to let 2025 be a reset, you know what I mean? And just be the start of something and not just be this big boom. Says a lot about me. And maybe that I'm growing up. Maybe it's getting older. Who knows? Our goal was really to kind of set the stage for what was going to come later, knowing that, 2025 was going to be full of me writing the book, updating the model, and really looking at all facets of what does the Kirkpatrick model look like in this new era, and taking the company from being, Jim and Wendy's company to Vanessa's company, and fully embracing that and fully being ready for it. I spent a lot of the year working on lowering resistance to how things might be perceived in the future, slowing down, although it may not look like it. And maybe my team might say, did it really feel like it, Vanessa? But here we are. I knew that catalysts needed to do that, right? They needed to help make the possible happen, and they need to be that start and that spark, and help make that change possible where it may not otherwise. And I'm glad that we took that time to stop and think. Sometimes when we become leaders, we're so hell-bent on like making our mark immediately and making every year. And if you're someone that's like a high performance person who, I'm also very competitive. So every year has to be better than the last, our margins have to be better, our revenue has to be better, like our work has to be better, everything has to be better. And that's not always going to happen, I think that if we think about truly what is best as a leader, it's sometimes stopping and listening and taking it slow. And I wish I took some of that advice when I first took over the company, and took it and made some different changes, or made some different decisions, I should say. But that's okay. We're here now. We can make mistakes. And I think that I made a lot of decisions that I didn't know why I was making them, but I knew I had to make them, and there was going to be a reason for them. And I told the team, and I probably said it the last episode, it finally feels like everything makes sense. It felt like a lot of puzzle pieces, and I'm like starting to put pieces together. And now the picture is finally forming, and like I know why things had to happen the way that they did, and why there were disappointments back in like 2024 that led to different changes and things like that in 2020, or will be in 2026. So that is 2024 or 2025, excuse me. And so I think one of the big things that I did this year was sit down with, my team, Amy specifically, and we sat down and started thinking about our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And like, truly, Vanessa, what do you want out of this business for the next 5 years? And I had to reflect on some of my moments of imposter syndrome, or some of my moments of like fear and like unsure. It's a challenge buying a brand that's so beloved and from humans that are so beloved, and being so different from them. Like if there is a spectrum, we probably live on different sides of it. And I had to finally claim that this was my company, and this was my brand, and this is my model. And I had to really make that stance of like, what does the future look like? And I had to also own where I am really good, and where I have strengths. And I can see forests beyond the forest that we are currently in. And like, I joke with the team, I'm like, just call me Nostradamus. I usually know what's going to happen. I usually somehow can predict what the future might look like. And so, here we are. And I think in this industry where you there's like academics and all of these things, it becomes hard, like I don't have the PhD, I don't have these things, but I do have something that's unique and something that pretty good, and it's led us this far, and it's led us through some of the most challenging years as a company. And as we've dealt in this industry. So I think that when you think of being a catalyst, it's kind of also having to own that. And one of the things that I love about catalyst being our word of the year for 2025 is like, catalysts do challenge the legacy. They challenge the way things have always been done. They challenge where we sit. And it could have been very easy. And there was definitely times in the last 2 years where people were like, you really just need to own your niche and like own where you are and like training evaluation. And I'm like, just don't think that is where we should be. And that's where we should live. And I just don't think that that is the right advice for us. And I'm so glad that I listened to myself and I, really sat back and I'm like, what does the future look like and how can Kirkpatrick lead that? And that's where I started thinking about, culture evaluation and enterprise performance intelligence, and really thinking of like, this goes beyond training and it goes beyond learning and evaluation. Like, this is a framework that helps make business decisions, or helps businesses make decisions. I can talk, everyone. Usually I'm recording podcasts in the morning. It's 4:35 p.m. today. But here we are. Kids were home from school, so we had to do with what we can. I had to challenge my own comfort, challenge the team's comfort zones, challenge our community's comfort. And that's all part of being like that catalyst and really like helping to light that spark and help people think bigger. And this wasn't a thought that I had in isolation. It was a thought because it was a combination of things that I was observing. I was seeing people use the model in other areas of the business. I was seeing people use the model in just all different aspects, of an organization. So like, of course, you know what I mean? Like, of course this was going to be bigger than training evaluation. I'm just glad that we did that, and I took that reflection and I took that forward, because it's also not something that I then created for myself, but I created with others. And, one thing about being a catalyst is like also letting go of the familiar, so when I brought to the team changing how we do our entire business model and saying, we're not, we're still gonna have certifications, but it's going to be in this way. And we're still, we have to have more enterprise solutions, and we're not really a tech company, but we're going to get into tech because, that's kind of the wave of the future, and that's what the market is needing, and that's what the market is missing. And I'm tired of looking at other people have solutions that, they don't align with us, but they use our model and our brand to like sell. And I think that this year was the year that we stopped pretending that learning was going to be the future. And the way things were always like, I think for a lot of times of disruption, it was very easy to like, all right, we're going to like have a lull and then we'll go back to the way things were always done. Like the market's going to dip, then we'll hire again. Learning will come back. We'll just continue to do what we're doing. I just don't see that happening this go around. And I think this was the year we kind of like just stopped pretending that we could continue moving forward the way that we've always done things. And I had to just make a choice for what I wanted for the future. So for 2026, what's our word? In true Vanessa fashion. So this was different than normal. So usually I would like ask the team and like we would kind of do this together. This was the first year that I was like, I don't care what you all wanted our word of the year to be, but it's disrupt. just going to let you know now. And I chose it quite a few months ago. And it's funny because I like definitely forgot about it a couple of times. Then I had to be reminded that's where they picked. And it's not about like disruption and like chaos. It's really about breaking patterns that no longer serve us as a company, as an industry. And I get very tired of listening to the same thing over and over again. Like the fastest way to annoy me is to like tell me the same thing 100 times. You know, let me not say what is going through my head right now, but so I think that I said to the team, I'm like, we just have to be that. We just have to show people how things are going to be different. And we have to start paving the way. Like someone has to pave the way and someone has to bring people along and say like, this is going to be the new way of doing things. This is going to be, you know, kind of like the new direction. And there's so many disruptors in our world around us, right? Like Apple was a disruptor. Salesforce is a disruptor. HubSpot was a disruptor. You know, and I said to myself, I'm like, why can't I and Kirkpatrick be a disruptor? You know, and when you are the top evaluation model, right? Like there's only one way to go. And I'm like, there has to be something more. And I was seeing the market share slip, and not that people weren't using Kirkpatrick, but like our industry was just changing. And I'm like, we got to move. And I went to DevLearn. I mean, this was already in motion before DevLearn, but I was telling the team, I'm like, there were so many sessions at DevLearn about like evaluation. Not that we were one of them. We'll talk about that another time. But about evaluation and like not being an order taker and all these things, all great sessions, but like, this is not new. Like this, I've been in the industry now since 2009. Do the math. Like 16 years now. Or almost 16 years, 17 years, I don't know, 17 years maybe. And I remember back then, like talking about like not being an order taker, right? And so things have not like shifted that much. And I think it's because there's people that are talking about it, but then actually being able to show how do you do that differently is a very small group. And I just said, if we need to, like, learning needs to change and we've just got to lead the way. And we can lead the way by one, doing it for ourselves, you know, and doing education differently, like when it comes to our certification programs. And I'm working on what does it mean to have a company like run on Kirkpatrick, if you will, like the Dunkin' commercial. Maybe I can get Ben Affleck to be our spokesperson. Well, Matt Damon would be nice too. But anyway, how do we like have an organization run on Kirkpatrick? Well, instead of just kind of selling this dream and just talking about it, I'm going to start with my own company and putting in the systems and the processes and the scorecards and things like that to show like, how do we make decisions as an organization, which we already do. You have to actually document it. But like, how do we make decisions from the Kirkpatrick lens, you know, for like our own operations and things like that, and documenting that and documenting what that journey looks like. And I think that we have an ability to say, we're going to rebuild what evaluation looks like. We're going to rebuild what learning looks like. We're going to rebuild what a scaling company can look like and how they operate and what does that operating system look like, and why it's so important for the organization to be interconnected instead of like running on like all of these different systems. And so I didn't know in 2025 like how intentional it was going to be, but it was just so perfect that we had a catalyst. And I knew, we had a catalyst, and I had a different word, I think, like last year. I was like, what I think maybe 2026 would look like. So me picking disrupt was definitely like way out of left field. It probably also came from like me being just really sick and tired of things and just being like, you know what, F it. Let's just go for it. And so I think 2025 for us was about starting that momentum and like aligning as a team. Like I think we really figured out where everyone's zones of genius were and put them in the right places. And we kind of came together and gelled. But 2026 is about what does that transformation look like and like really having a lot of courage. I'm super scared for 2026. I'm not going to lie. The idea that I'm going to have a book out there and that people are going to be reading it and they're going to have opinions and they're going to write reviews. And I know myself and I'm going to read them because I can't help myself. And I'm going to take the negative to heart, probably more than I should. But we have to have a lot of courage because what we're doing is so different as a company in every way. The way that we're going to be marketing, telling our story, the work that we're going to be doing, it's going to look so different. So if Catalyst is that spark, I think that Disrupt is our redesign, and just kind of showcasing what that is. So for all of our listeners, I want to thank you for an amazing year. New Year's is one of my most favorite days of the year. Why I got married on it. And I'm excited to claim that. And I know New Year's gets like a bad rap, and goals get a bad rap and like New Year's resolutions. But I think there's something, I was telling someone recently, like there's something so beautiful about having that moment of being like, wipe the slate clean, having your traditions, right? So if you're with me, you'll be eating 12 grapes at midnight, the green, not the red or purple, I guess. It's about, maybe going outside with your empty suitcase and walking around, making sure all your laundry is done. Your house is completely clean, top to bottom. It's completely spotless. All of those other traditions. Like if you have any, I'd love to know what your New Year's Eve traditions are too. Because I love to collect them. But I think there's just something so beautiful about just having that hope for the future, and just being realistic about it. In that, just because you have a resolution, like you say, like, I'm going to get healthy, right? There needs to be more to that. But I encourage you to come up with instead of maybe like a resolution, like what is your word of the year? What's your mantra going to be for the year that's going to guide you forward? That's a little bit more powerful and something that I think that can be sustained. And it's interesting to watch, we don't have the word like we're a remote team, right? Like we don't have the word like on our, board or something like that, right? Like we talk about it at the end of the year. I'll talk about it in the beginning of the year. We might come back to it in like the middle of the year, but like really we don't focus on the fact that like what our word of the year is. It just is there. But then we reflect on it at the end of the year and we're like, oh, we were, that, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, like we knew what we were doing, but like all of these things were like for something, right? Like this word kind of became this like silent undertone throughout the entire year, and really kind of like drove us forward. So I encourage you to find a word of the year if you're not into resolutions, but also have resolutions. I'll be vision boarding at some point during the holiday break, and really thinking about what I want for 2026 and finally figuring out my personal word of the year for 2026. And I'll be turning 40, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, have your word of the year, share what it is. And again, just thank you all for coming along this journey with us. I'm glad that we're documenting the evolution of the company and of the brand. because a lot really goes into these decisions. And I'm glad that we're able to have that documented, to look back on, and take a moment to celebrate and like really think for like, take a moment and make sure that you're celebrating, which is funny for me to give advice on because I typically never do that. I typically will move on to the next thing. But yeah, I really hope you have an amazing, amazing holiday season with your loved ones. Thank you for your support, for listening. This is the end of season 4. I'm calling it early. And in January, we'll start season 5. And I've been planning that one, and I've been planning the year, and I cannot wait to bring you all along on this new journey. So happy New Year, and catch you all in 2026. Bye, friends.